At the Home Depot, we make it easy to turn your to-do list into a done list with our speedy delivery options. Need something in a hurry? We offer next day and even same day delivery on a wide variety of products. The best part is you can order straight from your couch. Our team is ready to help and get your order to you same day if it's placed by 4 p.m. on select products. When shopping online, filter by delivery to see availability options. Delivery at the speed you need, only at the Home Depot. We are back in the Falcons Audible. Happy Draft Week.
Draft week, baby.
Draft Week, baby. Falcons Audible presented by AT&T. Everybody is a little bit more hyped this week, all right? Dave just shot another one of his series that is going to be on our YouTube channel, so go check that out about prospects. I came up here and Shock was hollering at some other Falcons employees in the hallway. Like, we all are energized and ready to roll this week.
Right. You didn't see Arch before he came up here. Arch just finished shooting one of his prospects, and my man was breathing hard. So you know what I mean? He was in it.
He was in it. Two things. Either I was really into it or I'm way out of shape. One of the two.
He ain't out of shape. He was into it.
Into it.
Let's just say he gets into a couple positions. How about
I think I may have saw him beat the sweat off of his forehead, too. That means he was working hard.
We're all sweating this time of day.
All right, so draft is this week on Thursday, and all three of us will have different responsibilities. Both Shock and Arch will be down at Mercedes-Benz Stadium doing stuff for the radio, for Fox. I will be here at Ticketmaster Studios at Falcons headquarters doing a pregame show, which will be live on YouTube starting at 7 Eastern time on Thursday, and we will bringing you all the festivities. And it is time to get into a little bit more of the details. All right, today we're going to get into a little bit more nitty-gritty. Last week, we stayed away from names and we stayed a little bit more 30,000 foot, okay? Today, we're going to get into some names, and we're actually going to go out and throw out some predictions on who we think is going to end up happening here in the first round. And then, of course, next week, our next episode, we will be recapping the newest Atlanta Falcons that ended up getting their name called in the 2025 draft. So, fellas, as I mentioned, we're going to get more into names. Last week, we agreed the biggest need for Atlanta is going to be edge rusher, affecting the passer. So let's dive into this conversation. Can we first start off by agreeing that we feel like Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker will not be available at 15? Is that pretty much
everything that we've been able to look at? I know we're all looking at the same things and stuff like that. It sounds like those two guys are going to go in the first 8 picks, 9 picks of the draft.
I think I saw one mock that had Jalen Walker at 11 to San Francisco, and I think that was the lowest that I've seen out of the 4 or 5. Okay, so let's just say, assuming again with Atlanta not having a lot of draft capital, I doubt I see them vaulting up the board. So let's take those two guys out of the equation. We can talk about them if you guys want to talk, but I don't think those two players are going to be available at 15. However, let's outline the guys that
what
we
if we
do
go
feel.
Julio Jones trade, go all the way up and
go all the way up and get him, right? Just shock the world.
How about that?
2 years in a row.
I don't like that. I don't like that. Even if we just keep our 5 picks, I don't like that.
Let's talk about some other guys that potentially will be available, all right? I'm going to call it 5 names, all right? And you guys can talk about these 5, or you guys can give a wild card, okay? I'm going to mention 5 names: Donovan Ezeraku, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, James Pierce, Mykel Williams, okay? If I didn't mention a name of a guy that you want to talk about, now is the time to insert your wild card. So let's just talk about these guys. DJ, I want you to start. The name that excites you the most, give us a little bit of a background around the player and whether or not you think he's a good fit for Atlanta.
This is tough. I'll be honest. Last week, I saw Arch salivating because he wanted to leak names so bad. They were literally on his lip about to fall off. And you come to me first. So, I mean, you keep it prolonging Arch's excitement.
I'm getting his heartbeat going.
Talk about it. Go ahead, Shock. Break it down for him.
But you know what, man? Those top 5, I look at my list, they are my top 5 as well. Whether they're, mix and match in numbers or whatever, those are the 5 guys that I think fit in the spot where the Falcons could use. One of those guys can come in and make an impact right away. Obviously, I got a lot of love for my guy, Mykel, being a Georgia guy, knowing what he's done in his career, been around him, seen him work, know what he's about, know that he would come in here and be extremely excited to be a part of this team and can absolutely add value. Of course, him being healthy is a big part of that. Was not healthy last season, so that's part of his kind of conversation is he fully healthy? Is the ankle fully healthy back to come in and, you hope given, 2, 3, 4 months that he's ready to go.
Yep.
But he's not the guy that I think is going to be there for the Falcons when I think about it.
Okay.
As far as who I would take.
Okay.
For me, we were just talking about it before we came on. The guy who really excites me is Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M.
Right.
A guy who you look at the measurables, 6'5", 267, running 4.5, 940, 40-inch vert, 10-11 broad. The athleticism jumps off the page for you right now. You talk about what kind of guy he is. And then you look at the size of him, almost 270 pounds, and the athleticism of, can this guy play with his hand in dirt? Can he stand up? Can he take on run blocks? Can he get upfield? Can he put pressure on the quarterback? I think he fits all that.
Okay.
And for me, I think in this system and what this defense will be asking of that particular player, I think he fits that mold. And I think we've talked about for the longest, so many guys can be tweeners. So many guys can be guys that maybe they're really good just stand up and rushing the ball. Maybe they're situational guys, but they're all big impact guys. I think this is a guy who could be on the field for all 3 downs and still be an impact player. And you look at the physicality stuff that he brings to it, the versatility that he has in the scheme. He's long, he's athletic, he's really explosive off the football. Now, there's certain things that they say sometimes maybe he's a little bit too high, but I think the talent, the athleticism is exactly what you want at that spot, and I think it'll fit very well in this Jeff Ulbrich defense.
That's the one trait that they always talk about, a taller guy.
Yeah. Right.
Plays
Right.
too high.
Right.
Well, if you've got that length, you want to play to the length a little bit. I think they say the same thing about Michael, right? He's a taller guy, plays a little bit too high. If that's the argument, we can drop his pad level, right?
Right.
The question I want to ask you about Shamar, if it's okay.
Yep.
Okay, 37 games, 4.5 sacks. Talk to me about that. If I'm a fan and I say, okay, I want to see some of those numbers jump off the screen at me, and that doesn't really do anything for me, why do you think maybe his numbers don't reflect the traits you just talked about?
I think a lot of it has to do with the scheme you're in.
Okay.
Obviously, the defense he played in was the style in which they're multiple. They're moving guys. They got guys moving in a bunch of different spots. And I go back to this all the time, a guy who played at Georgia a couple years ago in Trayvon Walker, and similar size, big, athletic, long, has all the same attributes you look at. And you look at Georgia and say, man, this guy didn't do anything. He might have had 5 or 6 sacks coming out of college. And then now, last couple of years, I think it's all about the scheme he's in, the position that he's put in, and how they use him. And I think at Texas A&M, he was used in a defense that wasn't, I won't say conducive to it, but it was a way of everybody being active, everybody getting a big part of what they want to do. And it's just one of those things where I don't think it really dictates what kind of player he is because of the defense he's in. I think the scheme matters more than anything, but I think he shows the potential of where he can go.
It's interesting, too, when you get a team that played great team defense. Texas A&M played great team defense, and so you're locked. Mike Elko, hey, this is what he's saying, hey, this is where I want you. This is what you're supposed to do in this spot. And I would agree with Shock. I mean, you look at Georgia. When was the last time we had a guy with 15 sacks coming out of Georgia? But they play great team defense. They're schooled, and I think that's exactly what Shock was
bunch of
talking
guys on Georgia have 5, 6, 7, 8 stacks, and not one guy that has 16 and a half. So, which kind of leads me to this question, Arch. You talk about stats jumping off the page. A guy that potentially people are going to get excited about because he showed it in college, right? There's 2 guys in Green and Ezeraku that did, number 1 and number 2 in the FBS in sacks. Is one of those 2 guys your pick, or is it somebody else as far as your top edge rusher in this class available to Atlanta?
And you said I couldn't take Jalen Walker, right? I'm going to defer to somebody different.
Okay.
I'm going to go different a little bit here. And these guys, are we talking about the first round, exclusively first round pick?
I want to
here?
talk about the first round.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I've got a couple of guys that may, we could talk about it here in a little bit, that might be available should you not go edge in the first round, that I think would make a difference, and maybe a plug-and-play starter that you may be able to pick up in the second round.
Perfect.
But I would lean to, so I'm not saying the same. We already talked about Michael Williams. I will go to Mike Green.
Okay.
I think Mike Green, when I put on the tape and watch Mike Green, he has all the attributes of a guy that closes and making plays. And a lot of people talk about, well, at 250, 245, not going to be able to play the run. There is some truth to that. He's a thinner sliced guy, whether it's like he and James Pierce are built very similar out of Tennessee. They're slimly built guys that can run. But you talk about how they can track the quarterback down. 17 sacks this last year. Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. Some questions about, why not Virginia and why is he at Marshall, those kind of things. Not going to dive into that. But this guy, what I love about him, Rack, is he is a full blast player. It's almost described as if that he almost runs himself out of gas.
Yes, correct.
And so in this game, we know, hey, I need to come out, and you got a rotation there so he can come out. So you don't get worried about that. If it's 35 plays, if it's 40 plays, if it's 50 plays, whatever he's in the game, he's going to give you everything he's got. That's what I love about him is there's no turnoff in his motor.
One of the things – go ahead, DJ.
Just thinking about it, serious juice off the edge. That's what stuck out to me, as Arch just mentioned, when you turn on tape and you watch him. This dude goes. It's not going to be any, all right, here comes a look. No, this dude is running, and he is trying to get himself tired. So Arch is spot on with that.
Guys, almost every prospect profile that I read on Mike Green, somebody talked about his motor, right? And here's what I think about that. Yes, there might be that he runs himself tired, and that could be a con, right? Remember in the NFL how they end up using pass rushers in certain situations? I think they know how to manage that, number one. But number two, one of the things that you worry about sometimes is a guy coming in, and is he going to play fast enough, hard enough, physical enough to be able to compete in the National Football League? I think if you have a guy coming in that nobody questions his motor is a pretty good quality to have, okay? And I think most of the mocks, not all of them, but a lot of the mocks that I've seen have Mike Green going to Atlanta at 15. A lot of people think that is just the pick that makes the most sense. He's probably going to be available at that time. Production was there. Atlanta has a high need for somebody to come in right away and make that difference. So don't be surprised if you do see Mike Green out of Marshall coming to the Atlanta Falcons at 15. So I guess this is now my time to give you my thoughts on this one. And I love that you guys talked about a number of different players. And I'm going to talk about one, but I'm going to talk about it in a different sense, is that I think Atlanta needs to find a trade partner and trade back and develop more draft capital. We talked about it right off the top of the show. We didn't do it. This was before we came on the air. The last time the Atlanta Falcons had 5 picks, that's what they have this year, a 1, 2, a 4, and 2 7s, okay? Last time was one DJ Shockley's year, okay? In 2006 was the last time Atlanta had only 5 selections, okay? So, not to say that when DJ came here that was not a good thing, okay? But I think this is a year where, okay, let's just say that they stay where they're at, they make a pick, and the pick at 15 doesn't necessarily come to work out to fruition, okay? There's 4 more, and 2 of those happen to be in the 7th round. And you guys know as well as I do that sometimes, and this is just a reality, 7th rounders don't even make the roster. Okay, sometimes they're not even good enough to make the active roster. True. They might be practice squad players. If they are on the active roster, a lot of times they're special teams players. Not to minimize the importance of special teams. That's where I made my career at, okay? But is that going to get Atlanta over the hump on addressing some of the needs that they have, right? 3 picks in the first 4 rounds. So my idea is they need to trade back, find a trade suitor. Now, I picked one out for you, and it's going to be the Chargers. I think there's a chance Chargers move up the board, and I'm going to say they try to find a wide receiver or tight end to go along with Ladd McConkey to give them more wide receiving threats. Maybe the Chargers decide to move up to 15, take Atlanta's pick, and you can drop back, take their 22, get maybe a 3rd, a 5th, something around those around that as far as compensation goes, and now you have more assets, right? As to use an old baseball or softball term, more at-bats, right?
Sure.
Can we get more opportunities? And with that, I'm going to take a chance that Mykel Williams is still available.
Wow.
Let's call it at 22. Now, he may be gone because I think as we get closer to the draft, there's going to be more people salivating over what he brings to the table. Right. Okay, you guys talked about the measurables. I'm going to mention one thing. 34 and 3/8 inch arms. I'm never a guy that really got really over the top when it comes to arms, okay? But I'm going to give you a comparison. Mike Green has 32 inch arms, okay? So think about it. We're talking about 2 3/8 inches. And everybody's like, well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, how about when an offensive tackle gets his hands on you, he gets those hands on you, he locks you out, and you have 32-inch arms and you over there swimming trying to get away from him, right? But when you got Mykel Williams now, he can turn the tables. He can end up extending somebody, keep him away, keep one arm free, swim around the corner, whatever it ends up being. I just think that, yes, stats may not necessarily be there with Mykel as we talked about it, but there's so many other attributes. His ability to get after the passer, his ability to slide down and play in the run. I think he gives you some positional versatility to go down to a 5, a 4-eye even, because he's bigger and he's got that ability to stuff the run as well. This is a guy that stays on the field, assuming that his ankle and his conditioning is right. I think he gives you pass rush. I think he's an asset in stopping the run. And I think he's somebody who, you talked about it when we were out in the hallway. Georgia players know what they're doing on defense when they come in. Go ask the Philadelphia Eagles how that's worked out with them. Georgia defensive players know what to do, what's expected of them, and the level that they have to play at in order to be on the field in the National Football League. Kirby Smart never lets them on the field unless you play up to his standard. That's what you're going to get with a guy like Mykel Williams.
And let's not forget, Rack, I think it's a great point, his versatility, his length. Don't forget that little one finger on a pass that gets tipped because he's got a little bit extra reach. But the ability for him to play across the board, but his dominance in being able to lock out. I thought that was such a great point of being able to lock out tackles. Mykel Williams, I mean, how could you, if you get him at, what was it, 20,
22 is what
22?
I threw out. And again, he may not drop that far. He may not. But I'm throwing out a name. If it's not him, maybe it's James Pierce is still available.
Right.
Still a really good, talented, athletic pass rusher. But then you drop back, you still address a need, and now you have more assets. You have more picks in this draft to be able to get more players.
Interesting fact about Mykel. People may or may not know. I get a chance to be around this team week in and week out and travel with them, watch them. And Mykel, we all know, was hurt throughout the year. And this is a guy that could have easily said, you know what, I know exactly where I'm going to be in this draft. I know I'm going to be a high pick. I can sit back, get healthy, and wait. He fought his butt off to get back, and he wants to show NFL scouts. This is what he told me. I want to show NFL scouts that in a long season, guess what? I will fight through some of those pains. As we all know, you go through a long season, you're going to have some nicks and bruises and stuff that go on. And I look back to a couple ball games, two of the biggest ones of their season against Texas, where he showed up big time in those ball games, even being hurt. So it tells you about the player, the character, the guy that is Mykel Williams. So any team that gets him, like you mentioned, if you move back to 22 and get him, it's going to be a really big steal.
Rack, let me ask you this, though. So if we trade back, which I would agree with you, I think that it sounds and feels more like that's what's going to potentially happen. I think it's a great thought. Glad you brought it up. Let's say that particular player's not on the board. Are you locked in? It has to be an edge rusher because you got Donovan Ezeraku, you got maybe even Mike Green. You could. What happens if those guys aren't there, or is there a guy there that you think will be there? Should it not be Mykel Williams, you're still okay with taking an edge rusher?
Yeah, that's what I was like. Ezeraku and with Pierce, both of those guys being available. I mean, Ezeraku number 2 in the FBS in sacks this past year. I think he brings length, he brings versatility, athleticism. He's also a guy that I would feel comfortable. You mentioned that he could be a starter day one. Now, whether or not he ends up with 12 sacks, I mean, we don't know if that's going to happen, okay?
Lindstrom will love to have him, right?
What's that?
Lindstrom will love to have it as a Rucker.
Yeah, bring in another Boston College guy.
Right,
yeah,
right. Matt Ryan would be happy about that pick as well. James Pierce, I think both of those guys. To me, Arch, yes. I know, again, I'm going to get to your thought because I think it's a great thought that you could end up pivoting and going corner if you trade back, right? That's been another topic of conversation. To me, I lobbied for a pass rusher last year and we didn't get the pass rusher, right? I know I talked about
I think all of us were lobbying.
Yeah, well, a lot of them. So it's like, do we go 2 years without addressing a glaring need for this organization, something that is lacked, not for the last year or two, but call it the last 5 to 7 to arguably 10 years, somebody that just consistently week after week provides pressure at the quarterback. It just seems like we have to address it now. If you don't go out in free agency and get a $100 million plus guy, at some point you got to address it in the draft. So, Arch, you kind of alluded to it, right? Let's just say it's not pass rusher. if they pivot and they don't go edge rusher and we stay in the first round, I'll even expand it to the second round. What other options do you think fit well with Atlanta and directly addresses a need?
But here it also goes the question of what we talked about last week is, do you start thinking, if you get to that point, is it best available versus need? And I think that's the other question you ask. Okay, we need pass rush, but here's another guy like you mentioned last week, Calvin Ridley sitting right there. And here comes the best available, and he
well,
may
you're
not
going to do that.
I'm just saying, not
the whole
receiver,
building at Mercedes-Benz may come off the rails. They may pick the whole building up and move it if we draft a wide receiver.
Right.
As a guy who's around this organization a little bit more than me and Rack, is there any thought that it could come to that best player available as opposed to need?
Yeah, I think that this is maybe one of the first years that best player available and need maybe link up this year, because you're talking about edge rush. Probably could use a guy at that second level. If a Jihad Campbell was sitting there at 15, would you pass him up out of Alabama? Obviously, we know what Jalen Walker and his ability. He's probably not going to be there. So then you go to the third level. Okay, you re-sign Mike Hughes at corner. You got A.J. Terrell at corner. Mike Hughes has the versatility maybe to slide inside. Maybe he stays outside. Is this a year where we talked about drafting starters, maybe not necessarily superstars, maybe they develop into that, but can you draft a guy that's a nickel in the first round?
Yeah.
Because that's where I would go.
Yeah.
Jahdae Barron, to me, out of Texas, is that need guy that might be the best player available in the draft. Ran 4.39 at the combine. He was a Thorpe Award winner, had 5 interceptions a year ago, 8 over his 3 years at Texas. He plays predominantly in the slot. He can play nickel and he can play safety. I'm all of a sudden, what shoots into my head is Earl Thomas.
Looks just like I'm kind of same build.
The same size. Earl Thomas ran 4.37 at the combine. Yeah. This guy ran 4.39. Earl Thomas was 5'10", about 195. This guy's 5'11", about 195. And I mean, kind of sends chills down my back. If he could be that kind of player that can play in the back end, in the slot, and then also slide out to corner if you need him, plug and play guy. How often are we in the nickel? 65% of the time we're in nickel. This guy's on the field.
Yep.
And even if he was your starting corner and you slid him inside, I just think there's a tremendous amount of versatility. So when you begin to think, Rack, about maybe you don't take edge rusher if you move back and he's on the board, or maybe at 15, the guys you coveted, when you stack up the edge rushers 1 through 5 are gone.
Yep.
True. Could be.
32 teams there's 32 teams are going to get a pick. 18 of them, when I went through my draft analysis, 18 of them list edge rusher is their first or second need. Now, everybody wants edge rush. You talked about it, Shock. But 6 of those teams are in front of Atlanta in the draft.
Yeah.
Could 6 edge rushers come off the board? We don't know what's going to happen to the quarterback. All of a sudden, Jahdae Barron's sitting there, and you're down to the 7th edge rusher. Are you going to take the number 1 corner or number 1 versatility guy in the secondary? That's all I'm throwing out there as a potential for that to happen.
Shock, I wanted to get your opinion on this because, yes, we started the show off saying it's edge rusher. It's edge rusher. These are the picks. These are the guys that they should target. But to Arch's point, if there ends up being, let's just say to his point, there's 4 edge rushers that go off the board, and the Falcons, for whatever reason, are not sold on the 5th guy, okay? If it's not edge rusher in first, early second round, what position or potential player do you think it has to be if it's not a pass rusher?
I'm in the same boat with Archer on that corner spot because I think you can never have enough defensive backs, and you can never have enough quality defensive backs. And you look around this league, and the percentage of teams that want to throw the football, percentage of teams that have 2, 3, 4 deep maybe at the receiver spot, and you have maybe 1.5 defensive backs that you feel really good about, and the rest of the time you want to play a certain kind of coverage. And we know coming in, Ulbricht's already said he wants to be more aggressive. So that means he wants to play more man. He wants to play more press man coverage on the outside. There are a couple guys who you look at and say, you know what, maybe that guy can fit. So I think there's corners. I think there's a bunch of other guys who can fit that mold of what you like. But I think I stay in the boat of that corner spot where you say, all right, if there's a guy that can come in right now and Maybe he's not A.J. Terrell, but he's close. Maybe he's a guy that fits what you like. He can play zone. He can play man. He can play bump and run. He can play a lot of different things that you like. That's the position I think you go as opposed to anywhere else because of what this league presents to you. And if you have enough of those guys on the field, that could help your pass rush. Because guess what? You got guys who can lock down. That gives those guys more time to get to the quarterback. So as we all know, front end works with the back end works with the front end. But if you have enough guys on that back end that can hold it down for you, it gives you a lot of leeway as a defensive coordinator.
Have you got a name? I know you like Jahdae Barron, so you and I both like him. Is there a guy that really jumps out at you?
So there's a corner named Noah Williams out of Cal. And watching him, I was extremely excited to watch him. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds, strong in press man coverage, very physical, really good in the run defense as well. Long, his speed, his agility, ran a 4.5, broad jump 10 foot. I mean, the athleticism jumps off to the page to you. And then you look at him, you say, man, this guy has all the tools you like. Looks like he can come in and play a day one and be that kind of guy. And then, what else attracted to me? He wore the number 3, so that was exciting to me. That caught my attention as well. But no, he is one of those kind of players I thought that you look at him and say, what, this guy could come in and maybe not be the superstar like we talked about, but can absolutely add impact and value to your defense.
Arch, I was watching your breakdown, and I wanted you to give our folks a little bit of flavor on Azareye'h Thomas, because when you were breaking him down, I liked a lot of things that I saw on that tape. Long, ability to get up in people's face, not afraid to play press man coverage. And it just seems like he's got a little bit of that flair that you need at that position to be successful in the NFL. You look at some of the best ones that have come over the last 5 or 10 years. Not only do they have the skill set, but they got that mojo, that confidence that, like, you ain't going to beat me. And I saw a little bit about him, and I seemed like you got excited when you were talking about that prospect.
Well, you mentioned flair and little juice. I mean, why not Florida State, right? I mean, Deion Sanders. Azareye'h Thomas, 6'2.5", 197-pounder. The junior out of Florida State. He's an outstanding athlete, as all these guys are. But Rack makes the great point. This, to me, was the pure press corner of all the ones that I looked at. He loves to come up. He's got long arms, so he loves to jam. I like a guy, I don't know what's happened, but the physicality at the line of scrimmage for corners has kind of gone away. It's all turn and run. Nobody puts their hands on anybody anymore. This guy's not willing to. He's going to put his hands on you. He does a really good job of tracking the routes once he gets in the hip pocket of the wide receiver. So not only is he physical and jam at the line of scrimmage, now when he gets in your hip pocket, it's like that, it's like that horse fly that won't go away. It's right in your ear. And so he tracks routes extremely well. He just does a really good job with the instincts of the routes. Now, I don't know that he necessarily has big speed, but he had the ability to shadow you. He had an unbelievable Senior Bowl week. He and Mike Green are two of the guys that jumped off the table at everybody at the Senior Bowl, because I think Azareye'h Thomas was one of those guys that wasn't maybe in that first 5 or 6 corners. Then all of a sudden he kind of thrust himself in because of what he did there. But that's cool that you mentioned him. He's got great play strength. He loves to get in your face, and he's got long arms.
All right, guys, we've hammered edge rusher, and we've talked a good bit of corner. So let's just talk later rounds. And I mentioned, as it stands right now, later rounds, Atlanta only has a 4th and 2 7ths, all right? So we don't necessarily have to talk about who's going to be there at 4, right? There's way too many variables that's going to play into that. But let's talk other position groups, Arch, that you feel like are going to be targeted later. Maybe 4th round, maybe 7th round, or maybe at any round if Atlanta does end up picking up some trade capital. I talked about a 1st-round trade. What happens if it's a 2nd-round trade? They trade the 2nd-round pick, and they find themselves with a 3rd and a 5th or something like. Other position groups that you think need to be addressed in this draft?
Well, I think that you're going to continue. I don't think that you just settle on one edge guy. Let's say you get an edge guy in the 1st round. I don't think you're done.
Okay.
I think you could, and let's say you move back like you suggested. We move back into the 20s somewhere, and all of a sudden you get an additional 2nd-round pick, or you're at a 3rd-round pick there. This is an edge class that, to me, is pretty deep in that you bring guys in that can to step on the field. Let's say Arnold Ebiketie has to come out of the game. He's got to rest, tap out. He's got to go out. Then you get a guy. But what you want is you don't want to step down. And so there's a number of guys from an edge rusher standpoint. Zach Sawyer, we saw Jack Sawyer, what he made the play in that game against Texas in the semis. How about Nick Scorton, another guy that's kind of floating around out there?
Yep.
Where is he? A guy that I like when I watch him on tape is JT Tuimoloau.
Yep. I've done a number of his games, and it took me a long time to get his last name. Tuimoloau.
Tuimoloau, 6'4", 265-pounder. He's a rugged dude, tough against the run, and he's a better pass rusher than he's given credit for, because he doesn't really
very good player.
Test off the board, but all of a sudden one of those guys. But if we move back further, I'm thinking, okay, we talked about center. At some point, you're going to look at the other side of the football.
Yep.
And hopefully everything gets done and you're all set at center, but you need a guy that's waiting in the wings to step in. Now, I don't think Jared Wilson's going to be there. I think Jared Wilson, because of his athleticism out of Georgia, is going to be gone. But there's some centers that potentially will be on the board. Jake Majors out of Texas is an excellent player. I don't know if you did any of his games, but he's an excellent player, 4-year starter at Texas. Drew Kendall, another kid out of Boston College, plays with a lot of power, a little bit undersized guy. Seth McLaughlin, who was at Alabama that transferred to Ohio State. You did a number of their games. Talk about a guy that's had experience and understands. He's got a nastiness to him too. I think these are guys that are going to be available like in the 4th round, 3rd, 4th, maybe even in the 5th round if you get an extra pick.
Yeah, a lot of good picks there. I did do a number of Ohio State games this year, and I think you're going to see a lot of Buckeyes drafted this year. One guy we didn't talk about, Emeka Egbuka, likely going to be a first-round wide receiver, but Ohio State, rightfully so. They're such a talented team, national champion. They're going to have a lot of guys coming off the board in this draft. DJ, what other position groups and or players have jumped off the board for you as far as good fits for Atlanta?
Just to kind of put a bow on what you guys just talking about with JT. Obviously, I'll let you guys have his last name, but he was one guy that when you turn on the tape or you watch an Ohio State game, he always was in the mix. He's always flash. He's always around the football, and you see the hair flying out the helmet. You know exactly who he is, and his impact could absolutely be used on this team. And I think we talked about it maybe last week, or or maybe just something I'm thinking about is I know we got some in house. I know we got a couple guys who have been signed and all this kind of stuff, but the tackle position is something that's going to be intriguing as well. Obviously, we're talking about later round guys. The couple guys that stood out to me are Johnny Cornelius out of Oregon, 6'5", 310, big, long guy, plays tackle on the outside. Talked about his ability to play in the gap scheme as well as in the man scheme, and we know the Falcons love to run the football, and that's part of what they like to do. Another guy, Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, 6'5", 312, a guy who can play tackle and guard, but also can be that swing guy for you. And like I mentioned, we got a couple guys who are already in-house, but we're talking about later round guys that you can develop, guys that can come in and add versatility up front. I think that's a big part of the win. I think we talked a lot about defense, which is rightfully so. Yeah. But like you mentioned, there's going to be times where maybe you think, okay, here's a time in the 5th or 6th round we grab a guy like this that can add depth to our team, but also, like you mentioned, if a guy goes down, we know he can plug and play and we'll be fine.
Well, guys, I can't help but think about the news that we heard this week that Jurgens from Philadelphia ended up getting the contract extensions. Yeah. He was a guy that was behind Kelsey, right? Kelsey was maybe one of the greatest centers of his generation, right? But there always has to be that depth. And I've seen a lot talked about Atlanta's offensive line as a strength for this team, but also in the same breath, a little long in the tooth, right? Tackles, one guard re-signed. Lindstrom, one of the best in the league. Bergeron, drafted a couple of years ago at the left guard position, feeling pretty comfortable there. Atlanta's in a good position at their offensive line, but your tackles are not getting any younger. Yeah. So at some point, yes, you do have to start thinking about the future, and that's one of those positions where you would like to address it through the draft. You end up going into free agency to get a tackle, you're going to be paying handsomely for that position. Yeah. Okay, so I think it's a good point that you throw out. Offensive line could be something that gets targeted a little bit later. Did you have something you wanted to add on it?
We're kind of hedging our bet here a little bit that Ryan Newsel, who's a restricted free agent, Atlanta has the ability to get him signed. Everything leads towards Atlanta getting that deal done because Ryan Newsel's the heir apparent to Drew Dahlman to be the center. Played 8 games this last year, did a really good job. Didn't see any step off as far as how that interior play was with Newsel starting. So he's kind of the heir apparent to step in. That being said, Jovan Gwynn is that next guy. Atlanta drafted him a couple of years ago. Really hasn't gotten to play very much. So there's a lot of inexperience in that situation. Yep. So you guys make a good point as far as the offensive tackles and the age now that maybe it's creeping up on one in particular. Yep. Although doesn't seem like he's dropped off at all.
Yeah, right.
But at some point you got to have those guys, those heir apparents, to step in.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm gonna throw one position group out, guys, that I think still has a chance to be targeted. It is on the defensive side of the ball. I talked about it last week, but to me, I think linebacker still has a need for this team because of Anderson, Landman, and J.D. Bertrand. I think those guys, you kind of know what you're getting. Bertrand was a special teams player, ended up getting involved into the defense a little bit towards the end of the season. They signed Divine Diablo as a free agent this offseason, so they brought in a little bit more reinforcements there, but I still think that's a position where Atlanta is trying to find a guy to play next to Caden Ellis, right? I think we all know what Caden Ellis is going to bring to the table. He's going to play his heart out. He's got position versatility. He actually, I think, wants to rush the passer a little bit more than staying behind his defensive lineman. But somebody else, that's why I think we were kind of all salivating over Jalen Walker before we came on the set, because Jalen Walker is the guy that can come off the edge, but he is the guy that can play off the line as well, and he can drop back and he can cover tight ends and some wide receivers coming across the formation because he's just that good of a player. Again, likely not going to be there.
And Rack, remember, Landman gone, signed the free agent deal, so you lose that experience, as you were just talking about. We lose some of that experience that you got last year. Those are guys you could count on. You were talking about. He's gone, so that's a little bit thinner along the board. Who wouldn't love? Okay, this is just me from a rookie show standpoint, okay? Who wouldn't love Demetrius Knight Jr. out of South Carolina coming in here? That's D'Angelo Hall's cousin. But not just D'Angelo Hall's cousin, also the cousin of Gladys Knight the Pips.
Whoa.
And, Gladys Knight.
Whoa.
And Aretha Franklin.
Whoa.
Tell me how good Demetrius Knight would be in the rookie show.
Come on.
I mean,
I'm going to hedge my bet there. I think he's going to be money.
Gotta bring it.
You draft him just for the rookie show, don't you?
I mean, he comes on the set and everybody just grabs the popcorn. Like, this better be good.
I'm here.
Right?
Come on, big fella.
No, outstanding football player, but hey, what are we going to get in the dining hall out of this guy?
We want to see the talent you were born with, okay, and not the sports talent.
Yeah, D. Hall would sign off, too. D'Angelo Hall's cousin. So Demetrius Knight Jr., part of that linebacker people that you're talking about.
That's right.
Aretha?
That's right.
You got Aretha in their blood?
Yeah.
Aretha, Gladys, yeah. You got a little bit of everything.
He's looking for some respect.
All right, so we kind of hit on a lot, and I know we might have let the cat out of the bag a little bit right to start, but before we close out, we're going to go prediction time.
Yeah.
And we're going to make sure that everybody knows what you guys are thinking is going to happen here in the first round. So, Shock, you go first.
All right.
Your pick, Atlanta Falcons on the clock. With the first pick in the first round of the NFL draft, the Atlanta Falcons select.
I wish we had the first pick. It's the 15th pick.
Right.
First
with the 15th
round. Sorry.
pick. With the 15th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Jalen Walker. He falls all the way.
Oh my God! He completely threw everything we said out the window.
Known, he did double hand.
Unbelievable! Unbelievable!
No, man, I think it's pretty where I want to go. In a perfect world, with all those guys already taken off the board and no chance of getting them, I think Shamar Stewart, for me, is the guy that I would not be mad at if he put on the Atlanta Falcons uniform. And everything that leads up to where he is now says this guy can come in and provide you with some immediate pass rush, hopefully. And I'm going with Shamar Stewart.
All right, so DJ says Shamar Stewart making the trip from College Station, Texas, and the A&M Aggies to the Atlanta Falcons with the 15th
I think I know who you're picking, so I'm not going to pick that guy.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, were you going to pick somebody? Okay. No, I don't want you to be tainted by me. Okay. With the 15th pick in the NFL
Stand
draft,
on it, Arch. Don't matter what he's doing. Stand on it.
the Atlanta Falcons select.
Stand on it.
With the 15th pick of the 2025 NFL draft, the Atlanta Falcons trade back and select Mike Green out of Marshall, edge rusher.
Okay. All right. So Arch saying that Mike Green not going to be selected at 15. He's going to fall. So a lot of people are thinking Mike Green's going to Atlanta at 15. Arch is going to trade back out of 15. And
Do we know how far we're trading back here?
He's going to go
I don't know.
And Mike Green still might be available.
Crap did all the math. Crack had it all figured out.
Dude, I really got into the weeds. I really did.
You can get in the rabbit hole for real.
On Thursday at our show, I'm going to go in a little bit more. I went into the draft compensation charts and stuff.
No.
Like I was trying to act like I was
Points you get and stuff like that?
the amount of points that you get and how you even it out. And I started watching videos of famous draft trades. Monty Austinfort when he traded with the Cardinals from 3 back to 12, back up to 6, and like how they orchestrated all that. I really got into the weeds. All right. But with the 15th pick in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons trade their pick.
Woo!
The LA Chargers are on the clock, and they select somebody. But Atlanta Falcons select Michael Williams at 22. And Michael Williams makes the short drive from Athens, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia.
He ain't got to change the wardrobe, keep his red and black home.
So there you go. We've got Shamar Stewart.
Yeah.
We've got Mike Green, but falling in a draft day trade to collect some more draft assets.
Hey.
And Atlanta Falcons collect more draft assets here, and they select Michael Williams. What do you guys have? I want you guys to put it in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube, put it down in the comments. As we shoot this show right now, you got 48 hours. Okay,
You're on the clock.
A little bit more than 48 hours, but I'm just saying time is ticking here.
Atlanta, you on the clock.
Put your comment down below. Who are the Atlanta Falcons selecting at 15? Is it at 15 or is it a trade back? You don't have to go through all the points like I did. If they're trading back, just tell us they're trading back and who they're picking. But we want to know who you guys are taking. All right, Arch, you got a new series coming out today. Which position?
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about the edge guys. What a surprise!
Okay,
we're talking about the edge players.
How many guys you breaking down?
I think we're breaking down 5 guys.
Woo!
And the guys we talked about are in there.
Let's go.
The 3 guys we talked about are all in there.
If you want to
watch that, how do you watch that, man? Because it's an amazing.
You go to YouTube and you click on the Atlanta Falcons channel and you click on videos, and one of the first things you're going to see is Arch's breakdown, because that's how I did it. Yeah, Arch. Hey, Arch he gets hype, and Arch gets a wide stance when he starts breaking these folks down.
He locked in right there. That's what that means. He locked in.
He doesn't stand there and talk like this. Once the tape rolls behind him, oh yeah, he gets that comfortable base.
You got to be athletic, man. You got to be in an athletic stance.
Hey, we watching him though, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. We checking him out.
I
appreciate it.
So as I mentioned, draft coming up in 2 days. New members of the Atlanta Falcons, hopefully helping out this team, this defense. Christmas in April coming up in 2 days. All the draft coverage coming from all of us here and multiple other members of our organization. We're going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. DJ's going to be doing stuff for Fox. I'm here at the studio, AtlantaFalcons.com. We'll have interviews. We'll have breakdowns. We'll have all of it. So if you need action on the Atlanta Falcons, we've got all of it for you right here. So thanks so much for joining us. This is Falcons Audible presented by AT&T. We will be back. I'm coming back Thursday. These guys are back, and then we will be back on Tuesday to wrap it all up with the newest selections. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Until next time, we are out.